So I want to welcome everyone. And let's see, I see my fellow board members. Okay. I'm going to begin with a brief statement, opening statement. And then within my statement, we will also take roll. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Rachna Bhatt, and I'm the Vice Chairperson of the DC Water Board and the Chair of the DC Retail Water and Sewer Rates Committee. I have served as a member of the DC Water Board since 2012, and I'm delighted to chair this evening's public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 rate adjustments. I believe strongly in the full transparency of the processes at DC Water, and my fellow board members were heartened to learn that despite the pandemic, DC Water staff were able to still engage hundreds of District of Columbia residents and customers through the recent series of town hall meetings, rate adjustment briefings, and community outreach events throughout the district. Moreover, DC Water staff organized special online briefings for the business community, our nonprofit partners who assist us, and constituent services representatives of the DC Council and the Mayor's Office. Those town halls and targeted outreach display a sincere level of participation and speaks well to the determined movement to engage district residents and businesses in our rate setting process. While the pandemic has impacted the global economy, we have not escaped its impacts closer to home. Water consumption and revenue at DC Water is down, a result of people staying home and so many businesses, hotels, offices, restaurants, and sports arenas not being at full capacity. As a result, DC Water has worked diligently to contain costs. Yet the needs of the system are great. We have an obligation to provide the district with reliable water and wastewater services, and unless we make critical investments in the infrastructure, failure is a likely outcome. Our hearing tonight is to review comments on the proposed fiscal year 2023 and fiscal year 2024 retail customer rates, charges, and fees, and then to make a recommendation to the full board on any changes. Our board undertakes this process every 2 years or whenever we adjust rates. Following this hearing, the board will vote in July on this proposal amending rates, which will take effect starting October 1st, 2022, and the following year on October 1st, 2023. Once complete, the full schedule will be posted on the DC Water website and shared broadly with the community. Joining me this evening are several board members, and I am going to go down the participants list. David Franco, Howard Gibbs, Joe Leonard, Tony Giancola are among the members of the board that are here this evening. Board Secretary, Ms. Manley, will you please call the roll to establish the required quorum for tonight's hearing?
Good afternoon, Rachna Bhatt.
Present.
Anthony Giacola.
Present.
David Franco.
Present.
Howard Gibbs.
Present.
Jed Ross. Ivan Frischberg. Dr. Joe Leonard.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Manley. For the record, DC Water was established by the Council of the District of Columbia in 1996 as an independent authority with a separate legal existence apart from the district government. DC Water operates the world's largest advanced wastewater treatment plant at Blue Plains and provides water and sewer services to all residents, visitors, institutions, and businesses in the District of Columbia. In addition, DC Water treats wastewater for approximately 1.6 million people in neighboring jurisdictions, including Montgomery and Prince George's counties in Maryland and Fairfax and Loudoun counties in Virginia. Our drinking water comes from the Potomac River. All of the proposed changes to our rates were published in the DC Register and were announced, excuse me one second. Sorry. And were announced via social media and traditional media and shared broadly with community groups and other stakeholders, including all ANCs, and of course, shared with the mayor and the DC Council. I want to commend the staff at DC Water for working hard to share these rate proposals with the general public. And I want to take a moment to remind the public that among our many goals for the environment of the District of Columbia is making the Anacostia River safe once again for swimming. Reducing combined sewer overflows as part of the Clean River Project is the single most important set of steps in that direction, and I'm proud to be involved with it. The legacy of our work protecting the district's waterways will be enjoyed by our children and their children. DC Water is a nonprofit, essentially an agency of the DC government. Unlike for-profit utilities, we raise only the amount of money we need to carry out our mission, not a penny more. We are proposing in this new budget to continue and in fact expand our customer assistance programs. And we're proud of the various ways we help customers afford water service. Before we begin and hear from the public and DC Water's management, I will review the ground rules for this hearing. First, individuals presenting testimony have up to 5 minutes to speak. Representatives of an organization or group have a total of 10 minutes to address this committee. Those testifying should clearly state their name of organization, if any, and their address. Witnesses representing an organization should give a brief description of the organization, its services, and its location. Please keep in mind that we are here to listen to comments only on new rates. If there are individual questions or concerns about a particular service or billing matter, management and staff are here to talk with you after the public hearing. The board gives equal consideration and weight to written comments that will be reviewed as we receive them. Written comments can be submitted to the Office of the Board Secretary, DC Water, 1385 Canal Street Southeast, Washington, DC 20003. You may also email comments to lmanley@dcwater.com. The board will accept and consider comments until May 16, 2022. A final decision on the proposed rate increases will be made by only the members of the board who represent the District of Columbia at the board's regularly scheduled meeting. DC Water CEO David Gaddis will provide his testimony. Matthew Brown, the authority's chief financial officer, will give his presentation on the proposed rate adjustments, and then we will hear a presentation from our independent financial consultant regarding the fiscal year 2023 and fiscal year 2024 rates. Afterward, we will hear public comments on the proposal. Individuals who are pre-registered will speak first, and time permitting, we will hear from others here tonight who wish to testify. Everyone on this virtual meeting is aware of how challenging it is to discuss rate increases in the context of an ongoing pandemic. This board does not take any changes to rates or customer assistance lightly. As always, this board will weigh the pros and cons of any changes carefully and deliberatively before taking any action. Thank you for being here this evening. Ms. Manley, I am now going to turn this over to Mr. Gaddis.
Correct.
the CEO of DC Water.
You're muted, Mr. Gaddis.
Thank you very much for that. Been doing this for almost 3 years now, and I still don't know how to turn the mute button off. I apologize. Um, Board Member Bott, thank you very much for the intro this morning, and good evening, board members and members of the community who are joining us virtually this evening. My name is David L. Gaddis, and I have spent almost 4 years leading DC Water, one of the finest and most innovative water authorities in the world. At DC Water, our values of accountability, trust, teamwork, customer focus, safety, and well-being guide our decision-making and reflect our culture on a day-to-day basis. These values are what enable us to deliver on our vision and mission for the community that we serve and to exceed expectations by high-quality water services in a safe, environmentally just, and efficient manner. Providing safe drinking water and cleaning our city's wastewater is no minor undertaking. Our team manages a range of challenges beyond simply treating and delivering water. One of the most significant of what we address on a day-to-day basis for the city is an aging infrastructure that we manage. DC Water is keeping your water safe and protecting you and your family. And we also go the extra mile to safeguard public health during the pandemic and protect the environment, all while trying to keep water affordable in the district. Since early 2022, DC Water has held more than 20 meetings, including board, committees, and town hall gatherings on virtual platforms. While there is still a pandemic inside, we are committed to working with complete transparency and in a way where the public can still observe and participate in every aspect of our deliberations. Our proposal to the board tonight seeks to increase rates by 6% in fiscal year 2023 and by 5.4% in fiscal year 2024. That is about a $7 increase in a DC resident's average monthly bill. As you will hear throughout the presentations this evening, DC Water is doing as much as possible and as much as we can do to ensure we are providing safe, affordable water to you and your families. While these efforts are absolutely necessary to foster a safe and healthy community, they are also very expensive as well. We understand that we are predominantly customer financed and that we bill payments and that the bill payments you provide us represent money that is coming out of your pocket. For that reason, we do everything within our power to maximize efficiency and to keep our rates as low as possible without ever compromising on the safety of the drinking water and wastewater. We only select projects that are absolutely necessary to meet this standard, and we find every possible way to reduce costs before ground is broken for any project. Further, we work to secure funding for projects at the lowest possible interest rates and pursue grants instead of loans wherever possible and available. And we refinance our debt whenever possible as well, and to reduce the amount of money we are paying in interest. The 6% rate increase that I've proposed for the average household to our board was not a decision that I made lightly. This entire city and region is laboring under the economic and social impacts of the pandemic, and asking the 700,000 residents of the district to pay more for services this fall is not something I relish doing. But I am proud to provide our residents some of the most expansive and progressive range of customer assistance programs in the country. Our wide range of assistance options includes one-time emergency assistance, payment plans for past due balances, and ongoing discount rates. We even have discounts for renters whose water bills are not in their name, something that very few utilities around the country are able to provide. In fact, this past year, we provided over $9.4 million in customer assistance to over 12,050 residential, multifamily, and commercial accounts. Offering such needed relief to our residents with the greatest level of need and ensuring that residents have the tools they need to assess our high quality water services. DC Water remains committed to supporting the economic prosperity and resilience of the district by investing in our priorities of ensuring customers have access to assistance for water and sewer utilities, replacing lead service lines, completing the DC Clean Rivers program by 2030, and modernizing the water, wastewater, and stormwater systems in the district. I want to thank the board of directors for your support. I want to thank Team Blue for what they do every single day for the district and our customers. And I also want to thank the Honorable Mayor Muriel Bowser for her support. And without her team, all of this would not be possible. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing from our witnesses. I am now turning the presentation over to Matthew Brown, our Chief Financial Officer, who will provide more details of the proposed rate increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaddis. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the proposal that we have on the table. So next slide, please. So the purpose, obviously, is to talk about the proposed rate adjustments. And thanks also to everyone who's attended this evening. So the proposed rate adjustments that Mr. Gaddis reviewed are consistent with our values, our strategic plan, and at the end of the day, our mission to deliver safe and affordable service. You see a diagram on the right side of this chart that represents the imperatives in our strategic plan that guide us every day. And that's how I've structured the few comments that I have tonight. So as we move forward, we're working to be healthy, safe, and well, reliable, resilient, sustainable, and equitable. And I want to share that journey with you and how our rates align with our strategic plan. Next slide, please. The rate proposal in detail includes some fees that will stay the same, rates and charges that will stay the same, as well as some that will be adjusted. So rates and charges that will remain the same include the customer metering fee, the water system replacement fee, and the right-of-way fee. The proposed rate changes are the water and sewer rates, the impervious area charge, the pilot, and then there are two fees that don't impact residential customers but are included in this package, the groundwater rate and the high flow filter backwash rate, specifically for the Washington Aqueduct. The overall proposal is aligned with our cost of service study, and the combined rate increases are lower than what we anticipated last year. If you've joined us over the last year, you may know that our previous forecast was that we would need to come to you and raise rates by 6.7% for 23 and 8.8% for fiscal 24. And if you heard what Mr. Gaddis said, the rate proposal that we have made is 6% for 23 and 5.4% for 24. Next slide, please. All right, so the first imperative, healthy, safe, and well, asks, is everyone we impact healthy, safe, and well? Obviously, our mission is to exceed expectations by providing high-quality water services in an environmentally friendly and efficient manner. The rates that are before you tonight support personnel, non-personnel, and infrastructure costs to deliver water to our customers and to treat wastewater. It includes $186 million to support the salary and benefits for Team Blue. There's 1,100 men and women that Mr. Gaddis talked about. The plan also includes Mr. Gaddis's goal of removing all lead lines by 2030 and completion of the mandated Clean Rivers program by 2030. Two programs that are part of our effort to ensure everyone is healthy, safe, and well. Next slide, please. Reliable asks, can we deliver our agreed service level in an efficient and effective manner? Our rate adjustments support efforts to deliver reliable service that's safe and affordable. Projects in our capital improvement program that the rates support are prioritized with an asset management approach that considers consequence and likelihood of failure. And the plan includes efforts to increase the rate of investment in our small diameter water mains and rehabilitation of our small sewer lines, infrastructure that assists our customer every day in us providing the services. It also includes $1.2 billion in investments in the Blue Plains wastewater treatment plant for upgrades and rehabilitations. And then also includes $253.8 million in investments for DC Water's share of the Washington Aqueduct's infrastructure improvements. All of these and additional investments in our capital improvement program help ensure a reliable service. Resilient. Resilient asks, are we able to cope with and recover from disruption, anticipating shocks and stressors to maintain service? And I would comment that this is both operational, this is an operational imperative as well as a financial imperative. Our plan includes projects that improve resilience, like rehabilitation of stormwater pumping stations, also is governed by financial targets and conservative budgeting to maintain high bond ratings that are in part DC Water's recognition of DC Water's ability to confront and respond to challenges. The board approved financial metrics, established minimum coverage and days of cash requirements to help ensure DC Water can confront challenges as we move forward. And as a reminder, over the last couple of years, in fiscal year 22, we had a $24.2 million revenue loss against budget. Our customer delinquencies increased almost 136%. And despite that, we showed that we are a resilient utility, and we were able to maintain our bond rating and our recently completed $400 million bond transaction that funded a portion of our capital improvement program. We know that there are upcoming challenges that we must be ready to confront, including higher interest rates than we've seen in a while, as well as budget pressures on chemical and energy costs, as well as the materials that we use to make our capital investments. And so we must be ready to confront those challenges. We also have a management target of limiting the revenue, the percent of revenue spent on debt service. That helps ensure that there's financial capacity as we move forward to deal with unforeseen challenges. And just as a reminder, there are indenture requirements, board policy requirements, management targets, and we maintain all of those as floors in our financial plan. And then the range of the metric is on the financial plan. So we've met the board requirement of 250 days cash. We've exceeded the combined coverage ratio. It helps us be more resilient. And so then you can see the breakdown of senior and subordinate coverage, and then the management target for debt service again helps us be a better and more resilient utility. And we've that in the financial plan we reached the 33% goal, but we don't exceed it. Next slide, please. Sustainable asks, are we able to meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs? This is about how we manage resources, including our financial resources. So the plan invests in solar projects that assist with revenue and also provide power for the plant. You may know about our Bloom product. So the plan includes the marketing of our Bloom project. It includes investing in our workforce, so professional development activities. It also includes expanding partnerships, removal of all lead service lines, as I talked about previously, by 2030. And to do that, in part, we've leveraged funds in the bipartisan infrastructure package. I already referenced limiting the use of debt. That also helps us be more sustainable as we move forward to ensure that there's capacity to address unknown challenges. And then we've aligned with the board rates policy, and that's that the rates should yield a predictable stream of revenues and rate structure that is legally defensible based on objective criteria and transparently designed. Next slide, please. So we must continue to manage our finances in a way that considers the future cost of borrowing. We know that as interest rates rise, there's a further what they call spread between various highly rated entities. So if you see in the 2008, 2009, you see that the yellow line got farther away from the blue line. So what that represents is the spread between what a AA rated entity can borrow at and what a single A rated entity can borrow at. This is important. We must maintain our bond rating so that we can consider the cost of borrowing in the future and what those costs will be for people today as well as people in the future. Next slide, please. Equitable asks, are we operating in an equitable manner to enable our employees, partners, customers, and communities to prosper? Our plan includes a commitment to a thriving community. It includes expansion of our apprentice program, opportunities for small businesses, part of the lead-free DC program, and other investments, revitalization of the rivers and Rock Creek through the Clean Rivers program, and the plan supports affordable and equitable rates. Though, as I mentioned earlier, the rates are lower than what we had previously forecasted. That was something we accomplished during the budget process by holding the line on costs. And then we've also expanded the budget for CAP as more customers sign up for that program. Next slide, please. So DC Water offers some of the most financially supportive customer assistance programs in the country. The first 4 CCFs of water, about 3,000 gallons, is provided as a discount to household customers. We have customer assistance programs that I'll talk about in a second. We offer one-time assistance both through the SLASH program and then our new programs that we launched during COVID for one-time assistance. We offer payment terms. If anyone is watching this line and needs assistance, please go to our website, dcwater.com/customer assistance. Next slide, please. Some information about our customer assistance program. It's offered at various levels. CAP is our basic program. It's available for households of 4 up to $82,500. CAP 2 is up to incomes of $103,200 for a family of 4, and CAP 3 up to $129,000. They offer various amounts of discounts. CAP is about $80 a month off the average residential customer bill. CAP 2 is about $52 a month, and CAP 3 is about $14 a month. We also offer other programs. The District of Columbia funds our CREAC nonprofit relief program to help nonprofits with nonprofit programs. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we've launched several programs during COVID or have carried many of those over so that we can reach customers and continue to provide safe and affordable service. So the emergency assistance program is available for residential customers. Our residential program is a continuation of that previous district funded program. We've offered some of the, as Mr. Gaddis mentioned, one of the first multifamily assistance programs in the country. We have worked with the district to implement State EC, and right now we're working to implement the low-income household water assistance program funded by the federal government. Next slide, please. You're going to see this slide. Mr. Marcus presents this information from us. This has been a traditional way to look at the affordability of water and wastewater charges across the country. Under a now old EPA metric, the wastewater charges shouldn't exceed 2% of median household income, and then water charges another 2%. On this metric, we compete favorably. The overall average of the various entities is about 1.42%. With out-district fees, it's 1.45% median household median income for DC Water, and with it's 1.54%. But I want to take you to the next slide because we are working, as we work to pursue equity, we can't just look at the median household income. And so we need to really look at the broad spectrum of household income in the district. And this is where I'm very proud to show the impact of our customer assistance programs on the average household bill. So you'll see here, and again, CAP is up to about $82,500. CAP 2 is $103,200, and CAP 2 $103,200, and CAP 3 $129,000. But you can see in green the portion of income that would be required if we didn't have our customer assistance programs in place. So for up to $129,000, it would be 1.16% of customer income, and I'm starting on the right. With our customer assistance programs, it's 1.06% of the household income. You see the difference even more pronounced at 60% of AMI. So that's about $77,400. Without our customer assistance programs, households would spend 1.94% of their household income on water and wastewater services. With our customer assistance programs is 0.65. Again, this is just to show the impact of our customer assistance programs that I'm particularly proud of. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn a little bit to rates as I conclude my presentation. So we have a board policy with regard to rates. I won't go through all the details here, but it's that the rates meet current costs, yield a predictable stream of revenue. They're based on annually updated forecasts, structure that's legally defensible, rate structure that customers can understand, and rate increases that are implemented transparently and predictably. And we've adhered to all of these requirements in our rate setting policy and what you have before you tonight. Next slide. And a reminder to members of the board who have been involved in the process and for those who have not, who are joining us, I want to give you a perspective of the way that the board has acted and reviewed the budget proposal. So the board committee review began in January when we presented the budget to the board. The budgets went to the various committees of jurisdiction. We also presented the cost of service study. It was presented to the rates committee as well as submitted to the mayor and the DC council. We also did an independent review of rates, and you're going to hear from Mr. Marcus and his associate this evening. That was presented to the rates committee, published on our website, also submitted to the mayor and the council. We're here tonight, as Mr. Gaddis said, to hear from you, and so we want to hear your feedback. What we will do is we will we will take your comments and respond to each and every one of them. And then ultimately we'll ask for a recommendation from the DC Water and Sewer Retail Rates Committee and the general manager prior to the board adoption of the rates. Next slide, please. So water and sewer utilities recover costs in a number of ways. Our rates must be just, equitable, reasonable, well explained, and based on cost of service principles, and they are. They're sufficient, equitable, and consistent with the proposed application to the various customer classes. The rates support expenditures that have been discussed in detail in the board's budget workshop, the Environmental Quality and Operations Committee, the Finance and Budget Committee, and the Retail Rates Committee. Reftalis conducted our most recent cost of service study. If you'd like to view that information, it's available online on our rate setting page. And then Amawak, again, who's joined you tonight or joined us tonight, conducted the independent review of rates, and their review is also on our website. Next slide, please. I will not go through every number. I will point out a few things. So these are the approved column or the approved rates. The next column is the proposed rates for fiscal year 23 that begins in October. And then the next column, beginning with $4.38, is what's proposed for fiscal year 24. You see here on that very first line that for residential customers, there's a discount in the water rate. That's for the first 4 CCFs of water, about 3,000 gallons. Usage in excess of that is at a different rate, a higher rate. We also have a multifamily rate and then a non-residential rate for all of our other customers, including the federal government and the District of Columbia government. We all pay the same sewer charge, so that's $10.64 currently and then $11.26. The Clean Rivers Impervious Area charge is charged for all customers, including the federal government, $18.40 per ERU currently. That will decrease slightly to $18.14 before going back up in fiscal year 24 as we borrow more money for the Clean Rivers program for its completion in fiscal year 2030. The metering fee and the water system replacement fee stay the same. The pilot increases slightly from 56 cents to 59 cents. The right-of-way and the stormwater fee remain the same. And then we've also placed the groundwater fee and the Washington Aqueduct rate on this table. Those fees don't apply to residential customers, but they are part of the rate make, and they will apply to other customers. Next slide, please. This was covered earlier, but I wanted to provide some additional perspective on the outreach. We've been proud to meet with customers. We've talked to customers at various community outreach events. We've held 2 in-person town halls. We've held 2 online town halls. We did a virtual briefing to members of the Apartment and Office Building Association. We did a virtual briefing to constituent services directors who work for council members. We did a virtual briefing to the Mayor's Office of Community Relations. We also did a virtual briefing to local nonprofit community partners. And the way we advertise those meetings is indicated on the slide on the right through various channels. Regarding next steps, again, we're here tonight to hear from you. We'll respond to each of those comments that we received by May 31st, 2022, with a recommendation to the Retail Rates Committee to the board June 28th, 2022, with board approval of the final rulemaking on July 7th for our fiscal year that begins October 1, 2022. And that completes my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Thank you so much, Matt. Now we are going to have the independent review of the proposed rates for 2023 and 2024.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Edward Marcus of the Amawalk Consulting Group, and with me is my colleague, Sean Lynn. We are pleased to be with you this evening to briefly summarize the results of our independent review of the proposed revisions to DC water rates for fiscal years 2023 and 2024. Slide 1 just provides a little bit of an outline and table of contents for our presentation this evening. Our presentation spends some time on recent performance, but then focuses primarily on the proposed change in impervious area and water and sewer rates and the affordability of rates using comparisons with other utilities. We'd like to point out that this is the 11th year that we've had the pleasure of working with DC Water in performing this independent review. We conduct similar reviews for New York Water and for other clients. During the presentation this evening, we'd be happy to answer questions on individual slides or to wait to the end at the preference of the board. Next slide, please. I'd like to just present a few words regarding our review, and then Sean will summarize recent DC water performance. If we could go back to slide 2 for 1 second. Thank you. So the presentation this evening summarizes the findings and conclusions of our independent review of the proposed rates. Amawalk is truly independent. We do not participate in preparing DC Water's cost of service studies, and our review is conducted after Authority Management prepares its rate proposal. So we also have no involvement in preparing the rates, the proposed rates themselves. Amawalk has been providing the independent review of the proposed rates on behalf of the Retail Rates Committee and Board since 2009. In addition to having the pleasure of working with DC Water, we serve as rate advisor to New York, financial consultant at Boston Water and Sewer, technical advisor to the Philadelphia Water Rate Board. And we also recently completed an independent review of the finances of the North Texas Municipal Water District as well. Sean Lynn and I conducted the review and will be presenting this evening. We have worked together for over 16 years. We have different perspectives, financial, technical, and so forth, that we believe complement each other. And collectively, we have over 56 years of experience in the water, wastewater, and stormwater industry. I'd now like to turn it to Sean, over to Sean to summarize recent performance of DC Water. Slide 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Slide 3 provides an overview of DC Water's recent financial performance. For the most recent 6 years, DC Water's expenditures have been less than the budget every year. For the same time period, cash receipts have been higher than budgeted each year, except for 2021, when receipts were affected by COVID-19. Year to date, 2022 are higher than budget. DC Water's recent financial performance remains strong. While this is not a guarantee of future results, this track record does offer a degree of comfort that expenditures and revenue estimates, including those for 2023 and 2024, are prudently developed. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes some of the DC Water's operating and capital performance accomplishments. Without reading every single bullet point, in short, I just want to say that our finding regarding the quality and efficiency of DC Water's performance are unchanged from the previous independent rate review. DC Water continues to meet or exceed the board's operating goals. Strong operating and capital performance helps manage the cost of providing service and mitigate risks. Next slide, please. Ratepayers are interested in receiving value for their water and sewer dollars. As pointed out in the previous slides, DC Water is getting the job done while effectively managing its costs. Water and wastewater industry peers in the region and across the nation understands the details of what it takes to get a job done. Industry peers recognizes DC Water's high level performance through multiple awards each year, association leadership, and the desire peers to visit the authorities' facilities. This illustrates that DC Water is both doing the right thing and doing things right. The high-level performance and industry recognition of DC Water provides assurance to ratepayers and investors that their dollars are being wisely spent. Next slide, please. DC Water is in competition with the other water and wastewater utilities nationwide for investor dollars. A higher credit rating will translate into competitive cost of borrowing. DC Water enjoys strong bond rating from all three rating agencies. DC Water's strong financial metrics and bond ratings allow the authority to borrow funds over 30 or more years at very competitive rates. The ability of DC Water to borrow money over the long term at attractive interest rates save ratepayers millions of dollars in interest costs. The prudent use of cash to complement the borrowed funds helps keep the total long-term debt more manageable and is a practice favored by the rating agencies. Next slide, please. Rate increases are needed for the following reasons summarized on this slide. Increasing capital and operating expenses, while long-term water use is decreasing. There continue to be impact from COVID-19, which will be discussed on a later slide. And finally, DC Water receives no subsidies. These are the same reasons that are driving up rates in other cities as well. Next slide. This slide expands on the declining long-term water use mentioned on the previous slide. About a bit over 60% of total cash receipts in 2023 and 2024 are from consumption-related charges, which means they will be directly affected by changes in water use. The chart on this slide illustrates water use from 2012 to 2021, which demonstrates a long-term decline. From 2015 to 2021, usage have declined over 10%. Currently, DC Water builds in assumed 1% consumption decline per year in its projections. Next slide, please. This slide highlights a few programs from the capital improvement plan. Fire protection capital spending has allowed hydrant availability to be routinely greater than 99%. The Clean Rivers program started in 2005 and is planned through 2030 at a cost of $2.99 billion. When completed, it would reduce the combined sewer overflows by at least 96%. The lead service line replacement program is fully funded in the CIP that aims to replace more than 28,000 service lines that are currently using lead pipes. This and many other capital investments support the quality of life in the district. Next slide, please. COVID-19 continues to have financial impact on DC Water. On this slide, I'll just highlight the table on top. It summarizes the consumption changes in 2020, 2021, and year-to-date 2022, and broken out into residential and non-residential water use. As it illustrates in this table, in 2020, non-residential water use experienced a significant decline in 2021 and 2022 year-to-date results may reflect the start of a transition back to pre-pandemic level. COVID-19 may also affect the ability of certain users to pay their bills. Account receivable in 2020 and 2021 is higher than the pre-pandemic level. While revenues are adversely affected by COVID-19, DC Water has reduced expenses and slowed down certain capital projects, leading to operating cash flow in 2020, 2021, and year-to-date 2022 slightly better than expected. In conclusion, DC Water is effectively managing the financial impact of COVID-19. I'll turn it over to Ed for the following slide.
Actually, if we could just stay with slide 11 for just a moment. I just want to point out that every utility in the Northeast and many utilities across the country are dealing with the same issues in terms of impacts on consumption, particularly for non-residential customers, a declining ability of certain customers to pay their bills, and a resulting negative impact on cash flow. Really, the last few years have been uncharted waters for the industry. And I'd like to say that we're completely in the clear at this point, but as everyone knows, there's still a lot of uncertainty going forward. So it is another consideration in rate setting for the next couple of years. Move to the next slide, please. Slide 11 summarizes the current and the proposed rates. Matt has gone through many of the details, so I won't repeat that here. But the management recommendations include some cost recovery shifts from sewer to water in 2023, and because of engineering cost increases as well as pumping operations shifting more cost over to water. Implementing the above rates will increase overall retail revenue by 9.5% in 2023 and 3.25% in 2024. And the cost of service updates on the groundwater charge and the backwash rate are also incorporated, as Matt mentioned. Overall, the average monthly residential charges for typical customer for 2023 and 2024 will increase by 6% and 5.4% respectively. Next slide, please. So the effect of the 6% and 5% increase is about $7 per month for a typical customer that is not eligible for CAP programs. CAP customers would experience slightly smaller increases of 5% and 4% in 2023 and 2024 respectively, or about $2 per month. The impacts on other customer classes in each year depend significantly on water use and the number of equivalent residential units for purposes of the impervious area charge. The table below provides some illustrations, and I won't go through the details, but again, it does reflect the individual changes to the rates. Next slide, please. Matt mentioned that we prepared comparisons with other utilities each year. We look at the overall rates, we look at the affordability of rates. One of the things in particular that we focus on is a comparison of DC Water with what we call CSO utilities, which is combined sewer overflow utilities. Utilities that have sewers that incorporate both stormwater and sanitary sewerage into one pipe. Typically, those utilities have expensive requirements in order to try to minimize the overflows that occur during rain events when the sewers can no longer handle the quantity of stormwater that enters the sewer. This comparison shows that, again, similar to the affordability chart earlier, that DC Water's overall charges are comparable to the average of the utilities that we survey. One of the things that's kind of interesting, if to get into the details of all these, is that it also depends quite a bit on where the utility is in its CSO program, because the programs are very expensive and very long-term. And as was mentioned by Sean earlier, DC Water is quite a ways through the implementation of its program, which is good news for the long term. Next slide, please. Again, as Matt mentioned, the affordability of user charges, water and sewer and stormwater charges without district fees are comparable and reasonable at 1.4%, competitive with peers, and with the higher district fees, still competitive overall. Next slide, please. One of the things that's very important is the affordability programs that the DC Water offers, and Matt provided quite a bit of details because obviously many customers can have incomes below the median. So the median looks comparable, but what does DC Water offer to those that have lower incomes? DC Water provides substantial assistance to qualifying customers, and this graphic shows the differential in terms of about $77 per month in terms of a potential discount. Next slide, please. One of the things that we do is compare the affordability programs that are offered by utilities with DC Water compared to its peers in the industry. We're very pleased to report that the DC Water assistance is significant compared to peers, and quite significant in terms of the size of the discount. There are many utilities that offer affordability assistance programs. DC Water's assistance program we would describe as robust. It's very extensive compared to what others offer. We'd also like to point out that there are some large utilities in the country that offer little or no affordability assistance. So that again, the program in place with DC Water is well designed and again, very robust in providing a high level of assistance to customers that need it. Next slide, please. One of the other things that we considered was the affordability assistance offered by DC Water compared to other types of assistance programs within the district itself. And we're looking at programs for gas, electric, telephone, cable, and so forth. And there are kind of external sources where additional assistance is provided and so forth. But again, our conclusion is that the DC Water assistance programs are robust compared to other utilities in terms of not water and sewer, but for other services that are provided to the residents and commercial customers of the district. Next slide, please. Next two slides, I'd like to summarize the conclusions of our independent review. Our conclusion is DC Water's proposed 2023 and 2024 rates have been reasonably developed, reflect the anticipated revenue requirements of the system, adhere to board policy, and are comparable to other utilities. We do point out that if water usage declines at a faster than assumed rate, the effects of the pandemic last longer, interest rates are higher, unforeseen major expenses are encountered, the actual financial results could differ from current projections. And as Matt mentioned before, there are challenges with regard to inflation and chemicals and fuels, interest rates are going up and so forth. So there are perhaps kind of the same risks that have always been there, but the risks perhaps are a bit greater going forward in the next year or so. One of the things that helps in terms of the revenue stream is that the rate structure of DC Water with charges not tied to consumption does help mitigate the risks of lower usage. So that does help mitigate some of the potential loss of revenues if water consumption were to continue to decline further. There's also some potential for underspending in 2003 and 2024. The availability of the rate stabilization fund also provides some flexibility and risk mitigation in such circumstances. We have mentioned COVID-19 a couple of times. It continues to present challenges to the industry as a whole. The potential effects are subject to change in this fiscal year and in future years. In addition to the mitigation measures noted above, DC Water's initiatives for targeting potential operating and capital savings, prioritizing capital spending, modifying the use of cash finance construction are significant tools for addressing the potential COVID-19 impacts on revenues. And as Sean has pointed out, to date, DC Water has done a wonderful job of managing its cash flow and cash on hand and getting the job done during the COVID-19 outbreak. The reserve funds of DC Water provide liquidity and help support strong credit ratings. Strong credit ratings help optimize the cost of borrowing money for the capital program. Next slide, please. Affordability is a current and long-term concern in the water and wastewater industry, as well as providing the cost, given the fact that the cost of service continues to increase. DC Water's programs are in line with industry practices, and as I mentioned, progressive in the level of assistance that is provided to low-income bill payers. District assistance to customers and DC Water's initiatives in response to COVID-19 are in addition to the affordability assistance outlined above. DC Water continues to monitor the effects of COVID-19 on usage and revenues closely. Should there be a decline in revenues, DC Water has the ability to take action similar to those that it took in 2020 and 2021 to maintain operating expenses at lower levels and reduce capital expenditures in order to offset potential declines in revenues.
Thank you.
That concludes our presentation. Be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you so much, Mr. Marcus. Next, we are going to move on to our witness testimony. And so with that, I wanted to call the first person on our list, which is Karen Sistrunk from the Deputy People's Counsel. And Ms. Sistrunk, you have 10 minutes.
Okay. Well, good evening. Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Gaddis, and members of the viewing public. I am Karen Sistrunk, Deputy People's Counsel for the District of Columbia Office of the People's Counsel. I am appearing on behalf of People's Counsel Sandra Matavu Fry. Also appearing with me tonight is Robert Rosencutter, the Managing Partner of Sage Management Consultants. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the current DC Water rate proposal. Tonight, I will summarize the key points of OPC's written comments to be submitted in this proceeding. OPC is the statutory representative for DC utility consumers, including consumers of water services provided by DC Water. In this regard, OPC's mission is to ensure the provision of clean, reliable, and equitable water services at affordable rates. Given the economic results of COVID-19 and the rising inflation, the need for affordable water and sewer rates is more critical than ever. OPC offers 10 recommendations regarding DC Water's rate proposal and ultimately recommends that DC Water's existing rates be maintained at current levels. This evening, I direct my comments to 5 of these recommendations. First, I will address 2 procedural rate-making issues which impact all DC rate water proposals regardless of the magnitude of the proposed increase or the substantive issues raised. As the consumer advocate, it's important for OPC to provide meaningful input on DC water rates. There are, however, procedural stumbling blocks which should be addressed. First, the current budget process makes the rate-making process, in essence, a fait accompli. The operating and capital budgets of DC Water and its financial policies determine its cost of service and ultimately the rates it charges the various customer classes. After those budgets and financial policies are approved, the rate setting process is largely a technicality with little opportunity to affect rate or policy changes. OPC should be included much earlier in the rate-making process, that is, during the budget setting and financial policy setting processes. Additionally, DC Water's use of a 2-year budget tends to produce overly conservative projections for the second year. Therefore, OPC recommends implementation of an annual reconciliation and true-up process to avoid unreasonable rates. For 5 out of the last 6 years, DC Water's actual revenue has exceeded budgeted revenue, and for the past 6 years, its actual expenses have been lower than budgeted expenses, resulting in an accumulation of excess cash. This results in consumers paying higher rates than necessary to cover DC Water's cost of service. To alleviate this problem, an annual reconciliation and true-up process should be implemented to reflect an over or under collection of revenue and to realign the rates of the subsequent year so that unreasonably high rates paid in year 1 will be lower in year 2, and so that any planned rate increases for year 2 that turn out to be unnecessary are not implemented. Implementing a process to include OPC and DC Water's budgeting and financial policy processes and implementing an annual true-up of rates would benefit consumers without putting an undue burden on DC Water. OPC's recommendations pertaining to financial policies, customer assistance programs, and rate design reduce the proposed revenue requests, resulting in OPC's ultimate recommendation to maintain existing rates. With respect to financial policies, DC Water's rate proposal includes certain financial metrics that are implemented in a way that drives the entire rate increase request. The debt service coverage ratio and days of cash on hand have been implemented far beyond DC Water's Master of Indenture of Trust requirements and also beyond the DC Water Board's own policies. DC Water's bond indenture requires a debt service coverage ratio of 1.2 times the senior debt, while the Board of Directors policy increases the debt service coverage ratio to a more conservative level of 1.6. The current rate increase proposal, however, increases the debt service ratio even higher to 1.78 in fiscal year 2023 and 1.77 in year 2024. These excessive ratios unreasonably increase costs to consumers. It's unreasonable to implement a rate increase with these debt service ratios of 1.78 and 1.77. Here, DC Water ignores its own board policies to the detriment of its customers. DC Water's financial policy and resulting metrics regarding days of cash on hand also negatively impacts ratepayers. DC Water's bond indenture requires days of cash on hand of 60 days, which the board increased to 120. This rate proposal more than doubles the days of cash on hand to 250 days. Now, regarding the Rate Stabilization Fund, DC Water's 10-year financial plan projects a balance in the fund each year of $35.6 million. Despite this projection, the year-end balance in the fund has averaged over $70 million for the last 5 years, with a balance at the end of fiscal year 21 of $77.2 million. The difference between DC Water's own rate stabilization fund projections and its request in this proceeding is $41.6 million. Asking customers for a rate increase of $45 million while maintaining an excess of $41.6 million in the rate stabilization fund results in unreasonable rates. In summary, setting the debt service coverage ratio at the board-approved policy of 1.6 reduces the revenue requirement by $83 million. Reducing the days of cash on hand to the board-approved 120 days would reduce the revenue requirement by $84 million. Finally, if it is determined that any balance in the rate stabilization fund is reasonable, it should be set at the $35.6 million level reflected in the 10-year financial plan, which would make an additional $41.6 million available to defer the proposed rate increase. Realignment of these 3 financial metrics supports OPC's recommendation to maintain rates at existing levels. Now turning to customer assistance programs. DC Water is to be commended for the number of customer assistance programs and the variety it offers. But OPC questions in some instances whether the program falls short of providing the maximum possible assistance to DC's most vulnerable residents. OPC recommends 2 ways to better align the goals and the effectiveness of the customer assistance programs. First, programs should be developed to provide more assistance to renters who pay for water and sewer service as part of rent. Second, the income eligibility thresholds should be adjusted to shift the available assistance from higher income customers to lower income customers so that the assistance programs benefit those who need it most. Because of the structure of the DC Water customer assistance programs, many low-income renters realize no discount on monthly discount on water and sewer bills. Tenants indirectly pay the bill received by the landlord, which in a master metered unit is considered to be a non-residential customer and thus not eligible for DC Water's residential assistance programs. In 2023, an average residential CAP customer will pay approximately $40 a month under the proposed rates, discount of 68%, whereas low-income master metered tenants receive no discounts. In addition, the existing CAP programs include assistance for higher income customers, such as households of 4 with incomes of $129,000, and a program for seniors with income eligibility starting at $90,000. In contrast, following the lower federal income eligibility guidelines would direct more assistance to those customers who need it most. And then additionally, in the interest of equity and affordability, OPC recommends consideration of a discount to low-income CAP customers on the 3 District of Columbia fees, the payment in lieu of taxes, the right-of-way, and the stormwater fees. Excuse me. Okay. And then finally, closing, I want to talk about rate design. OPC's final recommendation relates to how DC Water's cost of service is allocated among various customer classes. Rate-making principles dictate that costs be allocated as closely as possible to those customers who cause the costs. Following cost causation principles encourage customers to change behaviors to their benefit and to the benefit of the entire water or sewer system. DC Water's current consumption rates for residential water service include 2 tiers, reflecting a lifeline level of usage up to 4 CCFs and a second tier for all other usage. However, 28% of all DC Water residential customers use less than 3 CCFs and only 10% use more than 9 CCFs per month. OPC recommends that DC Water, like many other water utilities, adopt a 4-tier rate structure for water and sewer rates to align costs more closely with rates. And that concludes my testimony. Again, thank you for the opportunity to comment on this important rulemaking, and OPC will follow up with more detailed written comments and a technical affidavit, a supporting affidavit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Strunk. We appreciate OPC's communication and involvement and support of DC Water. So thank you so much. The next witness that we have is Laura Jackson in her individual capacity. Ms. Jackson, you will have 5 minutes. Ms. Jackson, if you may be muted, so please check. Ms. Jackson, if you're speaking, I can't hear you. Okay, I don't hear Ms. Jackson. Ms. Jackson, if you are on the line, if you can share a comment so that we know, that would be great. But in the meantime, let's move to Christopher Williams, President and CEO of the Anacostia Watershed Society. Mr. Williams, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Chris Williams. I'm the president and CEO of the Anacostia Watershed Society, located at 4302 Baltimore Avenue, Bladensburg, Maryland, 20710. Thank you for the opportunity to testify at this important meeting of the DC Water Board of Directors and public hearing. The Anacostia Watershed Society was founded in 1989 with the mission of conserving and restoring the Anacostia watershed for all who live here and for future generations. We do this through a variety of programs, including a field restoration program, working in the field, in the water, in the wetlands, to restore wildlife populations like mussels and shad, as well as wetlands plants, and to try to restore the overall function of the wetland ecosystem that existed, and to some extent, some small extent, still exists along the main stem as well as in the watershed. We have a policy agenda every year where we work with government at the federal, state, district, and local levels on policies that protect water quality as well as promote investments in the restoration of the watershed. We have a very active education program educating grade school, middle school, and high school students in the history, the ecology, and the conservation of the Anacostia watershed. We also have several adult education programs and a Saturday Environmental Academy for middle school students outside the regular public school curriculum. And we have very strong outreach and volunteer programs. We bring folks down to the river for tours, for kayak adventures, for canoe trips, and we have a large cadre of volunteers that work with us in the field on our restoration and education programs, all aimed toward bringing people down to the river and getting people to a greater appreciation of this remarkable resource that is the Anacostia watershed. Let me be clear that the Anacostia Watershed Society takes no position on the rate and fee questions being discussed today. Rather, I'm here today on behalf of the 10,000 members, supporters, and volunteers of AWS to endorse and express support for several important initiatives in which DC Water is and hopefully will continue to invest its revenue. DC Water deserves much credit for the aforementioned Clean Rivers program that's been talked about throughout this hearing. Though it was born out of a protracted lawsuit under the Clean Water Act brought by AWS and partners against DC Water's predecessor agency, it has since become an initiative in which DC Water takes great pride, and rightfully so. The Anacostia River portion of the project is essentially complete and is performing beyond expectations, reducing sewage flowing into the river from its service area by about 90%, and trash and debris in the river has been visibly and dramatically reduced as a result of the Anacostia Tunnel. Much work remains to be done to bring the Anacostia River back to full health, but the Clean River program's success so far is to be celebrated, particularly this year, 2022, which is the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. And I think this counts as a pretty remarkable Clean Water Act success story. Lead exposure from antiquated water infrastructure has been a scourge to underserved communities, particularly vulnerable children and the elderly, for far too long. AWS applauds DC Water's Lead-Free DC initiative, a long overdue investment to address this lingering threat to public health. In addition, DC Water has been and continues to be an important partner in AWS's Mussel Power program. The rivers and streams of the southeastern U.S. are global hotspots for freshwater mussel diversity and endemism, and the Anacostia River is, or rather was, no exception. Unfortunately, centuries of habitat destruction and pollution have decimated the Anacostia River's mussel populations. This in turn has likely contributed to the downward spiral of water quality in the river, as mussels are filter feeders that remove algae, plankton, and bacteria such as E. coli from the water column. The Mussel Power program aims to recover mussel populations in the river, and in doing so contribute to improved water quality. DC Water has helped with financial support and in-kind contributions to this effort, and we hope those contributions will continue. Today, DC Water is more than a water and sewer services provider. It is an important partner in the overall effort to recover the Anacostia and Potomac rivers and make them safe for swimming and fishing, as again was mentioned earlier. I hope that DC Water will continue and expand this role as the region and the watershed grapple with the next generation of environmental challenges, including pollution from plastics, pharma, and forever chemicals, the need for restored natural infrastructure such as wetlands and living shorelines to restore the natural functions of the river and the wetland system so that those can contribute to reducing pollution in the river. And that DC Water will continue to contribute to these efforts and add to efforts to improve climate change resilience in the watershed, which will be important as climate change effects take hold, affecting water quality as well as water levels and flooding in the watershed. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify at this hearing. I appreciate the opportunity to do so. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. We appreciate your testimony. I just wanted to see if Laura Jackson is present. Ms. Jackson? Okay, I don't see anything in the chat from Ms. Jackson either. Are there any other public witnesses that wish to testify tonight? Okay, I do not hear any. With that, I want to go back and just reiterate before we close tonight that everyone on this virtual meeting is aware of how challenging it is to discuss rate increases in the context of this ongoing pandemic. The board does not take any changes to rates or customer assistance lightly. And as always, this board will weigh the pros and cons of any changes carefully and deliberatively before taking any action. We really appreciate the witnesses' testimony today, and we will be discussing it. At the end of the day, we are making decision about funding the authority for the next 24 months. And without regular investment, DC Water will not be able to deliver the best possible level of service to the residents and visitors of the District of Columbia. We thank you for attending tonight's public hearing. And I just want to remind everyone that we still accept written comments. So please do send those if you are unable to testify here tonight. With that, I just want to open it up to any board members that have any questions. And if there are no questions, then we will adjourn for the evening. Okay, thank you all very, very much. Thank you to our presenters, and I hope everyone has a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.